We begin meteorological winter in the midst of a monumental snowstorm, several of them off the Great Lakes. And what we're looking at is radar, where you're seeing that intense lake effect snow. Some of these very narrow bands off of Lake Erie, Lake Ontario. We got Lake Huron here dropping snow in Canada, Lake Michigan dropping snow in the northern part of the Mitten, and Superior dropping snow across the UP. Now, what you're seeing, what's characterized here, are these narrow bands of snow, intense snow, fire hoses of moisture off the lakes, dropping feet of snow in a matter of days. In fact, we can see how much snow has already fallen in many of these areas. And one of the things you're going to see here, again, are how tight and narrow these snowfall reports are coming in and how significant they are. That's 46 inches off of Lake Ontario, but you can see just a couple tens of miles to the south, 3 inches of snow being reported. Same thing off of Lake Erie here. We can really get in and get close on this one. You're seeing amounts of nearly 3 feet in many spots, not far from the lake, but you go a little bit in one direction. For example, downtown Buffalo, no snow reports are coming in out here in downtown Buffalo, but just to the south, we're talking about 2 feet plus. We're seeing it on the lake shores of Michigan as well and out towards Superior. Amounts here all the way up to 3 feet as well, and up towards the Upper Peninsula, again, close to 3 feet in many spots, but very narrow measurements of high totals. 18 inches right here. You got 5.5. That's perhaps about 10 miles or so to the south and west. And these amounts, these storms are really dangerous because they can hit in that small area. And they can fall so intensely, that snow, that people get stranded and stuck. So that's been a very significant piece of our weather, of course, leading into this week. But we can also take a look, too, at how much snow may still be coming. And I'll show you through Tuesday here. We're expecting another, on top of what's already out there, a good 1 to 2 feet off of Lake Ontario, a good 1 to 2 feet off of Lake Erie. The other Great Lakes we can take a look at here as well. And those amounts are just absolutely stunning. Of course, we see this. You get one of these big events perhaps once every other winter. We've had quite a few recently, but another 2 feet potentially off of the other lakes as well. And this is our main concern in the weather, especially as we go through Monday and Tuesday and the snow continues. But more snow actually may be on the way Wednesday and Thursday as another system comes in. And we'll talk about that in a moment. But I want to get into the cold and some other areas that are seeing some very unusual weather for this time of year. Cold weather has been a huge part of the forecast as we walk out of November, and it will continue to be a big part of the forecast moving into December as well. But our forecast and pattern is beginning to evolve. Let me break this down for you here. And what we're looking at is the air masses occupying the atmosphere, big picture. You can see we have this colder air mass in the eastern U.S., we have this warmer air mass in the western U.S., and we're going to be stuck like that for a good chunk of this week. But one of the things that's beginning to shift is actually what you're seeing out near Greenland and in the North Atlantic. We call this the NAO. It's moving into a more positive phase, and that positive phase helps to lock cold air down in the eastern U.S., but it's going to begin to flip, and it's going to allow that cold air to escape. So let's watch how this evolves over the next several days here. And as we move this into Tuesday, you can see that cold air still in the eastern U.S. We got another round of colder air coming in as we head into the middle of the week. But now that we don't have that blocking up here, it's going to allow the cold air to escape. And you're also going to notice our ridge out here, that warmer air in the western U.S., it's going to migrate a little bit farther over to the Pacific, and that's going to open the door for milder air to begin to build much closer to the coastline. So watch what happens as we head into the upcoming weekend. That cold air gives us one more shot, and then it's still going to hang around, don't get me wrong, but it will begin to subside a bit. And this is more heading into next week now, but because it's been a big topic of conversation, here's a look at the second week of December. Still doesn't look warm in the eastern U.S., but certainly not getting that strong signal for cold weather. In fact, the coldest air may shift more into the central U.S., so you guys who are in more so the plains, the Midwest, you may get the colder air, but I'm not seeing any kind of Arctic air in the second week of December anywhere. But that said, we're still looking at cold weather this week without a doubt, and persistent cold weather too. In fact, we can pull up our temperatures here as we're forecasting what it's going to be relative to average, and anywhere you're seeing those blues and purples, that's much colder air than our averages, and you're going to see that air mass again really sit around, and gosh, this is a really strong signal for much colder than average weather in the southeastern U.S. In fact, there may be some frost or freeze all the way down towards the Gulf Coast here as we move into Monday and even Tuesday mornings. It's a possibility, not something you see often, but that cold air sits around. Here we are on Tuesday into Wednesday. Wednesday's when we begin to thaw out here, but it's really temporary because we have a system that's bringing colder air down into the U.S. So Wednesday, a bit of a flip in the central U.S., but that's not going to last long. Eastern U.S. stays cold. Here we are now as we get later into the week. Again, this is our next system, bringing another shot of cold air in here. And as we walk into the weekend, you'll see it really settle in across the eastern U.S., especially the northeast. But what begins to happen as well is that this much milder air mass, which is keeping the western U.S. very comfortable, is going to begin to spread to the east. And so as we head into the weekend and next week, that's where I was talking about that pattern change. You see a big flip begin to occur. And there will be some warmer and colder bursts here and there, but it's not going to be as consistent cold. And that's a big deal here. We can also take a look at some of the temperatures just to give you an idea of roughly what we're expecting in terms of, what it's actually going to be like outside. So we'll open this up for you and we'll just gloss over this. But here we are on Monday. These are some of your Monday morning lows. I mean, those are sub-zero lows potentially in the north central U.S. But we're also talking about lows easily into the 30s down into northern Florida. So, that's pretty cold. A lot of teens out there as well. Just anywhere you're seeing those blue colors, those are temperatures below freezing. So that's your Monday morning. We head into the afternoon. Warms up. Of course, as we get later into the week, you can see that colder air mass begins to move farther to the east. Here's our second shot of cold air in the middle of the week. We're talking about temps that may be near freezing, definitely into the 30s, down to Florida once again. Lows that'll be in the single digits across the north central U.S. It's going to be cold, but you can see comparatively the western U.S. pretty mild, especially as we get later into the week. You're seeing highs out there return back to the 40s and 50s, and if you're in Arizona or on the California coast, we're talking 60s and 70s. And as we get into next weekend, those temperatures, they begin to moderate a bit more. But you're seeing 50s and 60s even return to the south central U.S. by the upcoming weekend. So a big flip in that weather. But I also want to jump into that system that you saw, bring that second shot of cold air, because it's going to do more than just bring cold air. We got snow on the way. Let's talk about who's going to see that coming up. Let's dive into that system that's bringing snow to much of the north and especially the northeast this week. And you're going to notice first off that, most of the U.S. is going to be very dry this week. So certainly not a lot of active weather. But if you keep a close eye on south central Canada here, especially towards the middle of the week, which is what we're going to move it into now, you're going to see something begin to emerge. And there it is. There's our system popping in here. This is late Tuesday into early Wednesday. We're looking at the European model, by the way, but both the European and American actually have a really strong agreement on this. So I'm confident the system's going to emerge and it's going to look like what we're seeing here. So that's going to come through Tuesday into Wednesday across southern Canada and begin to enter the U.S. later on Wednesday and into Thursday. Going to be a lot of wind. That's why you're see those black lines? We call them isobars. See how they're packed together really tightly? That tells you there's big pressure gradient and there's going to be a lot of wind. And that's also a sign that this is going to keep the lake effect snow machine cranking as we get into the middle of the week too, which is a whole separate ordeal. So those lake shores, especially the more southern ones, may be in for some more intense snow as we head through the middle of this week. And I can't understate that because that can be risky. But what you're seeing across a good chunk of the northeast here, or will see, is snow begin to take over. And it's certainly cold enough for snow. Here we are heading into Thursday, especially if this thing comes through at night. You can see the Alps getting a decent round of snow here. Many of the mountains in northern New England will get some snow. Could be some mixing out here in southern New England where it's a bit milder. But we'll actually zoom into New England here and take a closer look at this. But what I want to point out is that a lot of the area is going to get some snow. We call this a clipper system, though. And clippers are known for being quite dry. It's not going to bring that much moisture. So while you're seeing widespread snow, it's not going to be anything big. But that said, a lot of areas still waiting for their first snowfall, and this could be it. Also, some hints that we may see snow squalls reach into New England as well. That's yet to be seen, but worth noting, these clipper systems can do that as well as they bring some instability. And again, you can see how tightly packed those isobars are on the backside, indicating strong gusty wind. So it's going to be a pretty windy and raw Thursday across much of the Northeast, and Friday as well, it appears. And you're still seeing those hints at lake effect snow. I want to take a look at amounts with you too, and we'll take a look at the national blended models. That's what I always prefer to use for amounts. It just evens everything out and really takes everything into account. Does a good job. And we're going to go back to the last run. There we go. So there's your lake effect snow through the beginning of the week. We looked at that. But as we head into Wednesday, here's your clipper that comes in. Now, I'll say, I think the model here is coming in a little hot on some of the snowfall. I wouldn't expect amounts as high as what are being put out here. You're seeing across the higher elevations in New England, more so the hills and mountains, you're seeing amounts that are on this model, 3 to 6 inches, even up to 10 in the mountains. Up to 10 in the mountains, it could happen. Could happen in the mountains where you have more powdery snow. But I'm thinking the most we're going to see in many of these areas is going to be on the order of 2 to 4 inches in the hills. And that would be a pretty ideal scenario if there was going to be that much snow. I would top it out at that. These systems are just so dry. There's not a lot of moisture. Outside the higher elevations, I wouldn't expect much more than a coating to an inch perhaps. And we're still ways out. This thing can still evolve. But the point here is light snowfall, not plowable for the vast majority unless you're in the higher elevations, hills or mountains. I do want to mention, though, that these lake effect snow bands are still going to be present, and through the middle of the week here, we're talking about what is going to be, from the start of the week to the end of the week, another 2 to likely 3 feet in many of these areas. We can even take a look at the north central U.S. at some of the snow that's expected out there. We know a lot of that's going to come Monday, Tuesday, as these systems are cranking out snow at the highest rate right now. But even through the middle of the week, you're looking at that's another potentially 3 feet cumulatively off Superior, easily 3 to 4 feet even off Huron, and it could be another 3 feet off Michigan too between the start of the week and the end of the week. So some serious snow on those lake shores, but for much of the Northeast and much of the central U.S. too, you're seeing more light snow as these clipper systems, they just, like I said, they're very dry, don't pack that much of a punch. We're going to wrap up the video with a look at the Pacific Northwest, which so far has been quiet, but there is a storm system and it may impact the upcoming weekend, so let's dive into that. While the weather's been very quiet across the U.S. to this point, outside of those lakes and the Northeast, things will change as we head into the following weekend, and I'm going to bring this all the way into next week. You're going to see just how quiet the U.S. is. There's our clipper, and then this week, we're talking about on Friday into the weekend, we have the system beginning to show up here in the Northwest. You're going to see some rain, some snow in the mountains. It's going to be something to keep an eye on as this comes ashore. This is the European model, by the way. There's your rain. Could be a lot out there towards British Columbia and into Washington State. Here we are Friday, and that rain's still coming. Sort of an atmospheric river event, but a more compact system here. Saturday, rain's spreading across Oregon. You got snow in the Rockies. Then as we head into the later weekend, the system begins to drift into the central U.S. And we'll actually have to watch this guy for potential snow out in the Northeast too, but we're ways out from that. The Northwest, though, a little more likely to occur here. We'll also take a look at the American model so you can get an idea of our range of outcomes. Here we are on Wednesday. Now here's Thursday. American model has this thing coming in a little earlier. And you can see that rain spreading out across the region. Not as much, but we get that second burst to come in on Saturday. So it doesn't allow these two systems over the ocean to phase. It keeps them separate. But still, the result will be some rain and snow in that region, especially late week and into the weekend. And that snow will spread across the Rockies as well. And similarly, it's something that we'll need to keep an eye on as this wave of energy moves into the Northeast. So I would expect right now, Saturday, the most likely day for rain and snow out in the Northwest. But Thursday, Friday, even Sunday are still in play. Sunday may be more likely some snow across this portion of the country, the Rockies and areas a little bit to the east. But we can also take a look at totals out here. I'm going to take you to the National Blended Models once again. We're going to dive into the Northwest, and we're going to take a look at we'll look at rainfall first, because that in and of itself could be quite notable. So we'll extend this outwards into next weekend. Actually, that run doesn't reach, so we're going to go to the last one. There we go. And what you're looking at here is that's a lot of rain. If this does come to fruition, and there's still some time to watch this, we could be looking at flooding for sure in Washington State. I mean, NBM spitting out a good 3 to 5 inches of precip. It's possible right along the mountains there. Could even be more in some spots. And certainly that's something that we'll need to keep an eye on. Decent rainfall right along those mountains all the way into Oregon, in fact, and right on our coastline here too. So potential flooding in those spots at the very least. We'll talk about that. We can also dive into some of that winter weather and take a look at snowfall. There's going to be a lot in those mountains, as we typically see in these events this time of year, but nothing crazy. We're looking at, that looks like a pretty good elevation snowfall, so you know how it goes out there. It really depends on how high up you are. That determines who sees the heaviest snow, and it does appear that we're looking at something that may drop up to a foot in some of those mountain peaks, maybe some more in spots. Good for ski country. It looks like we got some of this extending, there we go, into the Rockies. That'll probably make its way down into Colorado too. May not be quite as much. Could be something more like 6 inches in some of those mountain peaks, but enough that we're setting that wintry scene continually in the mountains, and there may be some heavy rain on the coastline too. So stay dry out there. Keep an eye on that storm system. Otherwise, it's a very nice week out there. It's actually quite mild for this time of year, so get outside before this comes in. It looks pretty good. So that concludes our forecast this week. Again, a quieter week overall, but still some areas where you got to keep an eye on. Those lake shores, I mean, that's some crazy snow out there. Northeast U.S., get that clipper, and in the Northwest, some rain and some snow in the mountains late in the week. Certainly at some point, I will get out to the lake shorelines and chase some of that heavy snow. Working in Boston, got to keep everyone up to date on TV out here, but someday we'll make it happen. But wherever you are, hope you have a nice week of weather. If you're in the Southeast, make sure you stay warm as well. It's getting real cold out there for this time of year. But enjoy the actually pretty nice weather if you're in the West. Certainly not going to stay like that all winter. At least we can surmise things will have to change at some point, but might as well take advantage of it while you have it. So with that, we'll wrap up the video. Good luck to everyone who's been watching college football. Your team's in the playoffs. Penn State, keep my fingers crossed. We got Oregon in the Big Ten Championship on Saturday. We are. Let's go Nittany Lions. And best of luck to all your teams, unless they're playing mine. See you guys next week with an update on your weekly forecast.